Thank you for watching TV Houston's Diversity Talk, and I'm your host, Sangeeta Dua. Once again, thank you so much for your support, and thank you so much for your emails and your private messages that you do send it to me with all the requests that we have received over our emails and over through our Facebook page. We have our returning guest. As you know, last Friday, we had about 7 attorneys that we did our town hall with at our different building, and we took you to the location where we were discussing about all the immigration laws and executive orders, and we had question answers, and it was live coverage from that town hall and building next door at that International Trade Center. So as you all had requested that we had more questions that you wanted to be answered, and there were more concerns that you had sent it to me, and I'm going to take those concerns of yours and then personally ask the questions. And we have our returning guest, and he is an attorney at Modi Law Firm. His name is Susham M. Modi. And now Mr. Modi has been helping the community a lot because he had studied in Harvard a little bit. Before that, he had, before I said anything a lot more about him, let me introduce Mr. Modi to you guys. Welcome, Mr. Modi. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me today, and we're happy to help the community talk about immigration law.
Very good, very good. So as we were talking, Mr. Modi, you had a study at the law school, which was...
Yeah, so I went to Penn State for law school. That's where I graduated from. I was honored to work at Harvard Law School for a year in the Harvard Immigration and Refugee Clinic. And currently, I'm a adjunct professor of law at the University of Houston Law School, as well as the owner and founder of our firm, the Modi Law Firm, that practices exclusively immigration law.
Absolutely. Very, very nice, very nice. And you've been working for about 7 years now and exclusively for the immigration.
That's correct.
Okay. So my first question to you is, what have you find the difference between, since you've been working for the immigration and in that particular field, in that industry for about 7 years, what is the difference between the Trump administration and the Obama administration, specifically in that field of immigration?
Yeah, I think clearly one of the differences is rhetoric, and everybody sees that from credible news programs, including yours. But the impact a lot of people don't see on immigrants of all types, you know, and what we see in the media reporting President Trump's news is the language that he reports himself is not accurate. So, for example, he'll say illegal immigrants, you know, and they're illegally here and they should be deported. Well, if we just start our analysis there, people themselves are not illegal. A proper legal term, a more proper legal term may be undocumented.
Correct.
Because a lot of people don't realize this, but immigration law is not criminal law, it's civil law. And so even that first instance of calling that, and that's where the rhetoric really starts, but is more extreme with President Trump, including with the Muslim ban, which is even more recent news that came out this week on that, and just using that language which he initially did. In fact, funny enough, Sangeeta, that language he used about the Muslim ban, even when he was running as a candidate, is the exact language that the district court in Hawaii put in their actual court opinion to show why he may be discriminating against the Establishment Clause of the U.S. Constitution, the clause that allows freedom of religion and not, for it not to be impaired between state and church, to be separated specifically.
Okay, so with that particular topic, I wanted to discuss that. Okay, when they say, of course, we've been hearing that in the news as well, even lately more than ever, is like when he says we're going to ban 7 countries, and then he said another executive order came that, okay, we're going to take 1 out, Iraq out, and now we're going to be banning only 6 countries, and more that could be added, and on all of that. But if you really look at it in a probably legal terms would be a little different, but the language that I'm going to speak is the public language and the general grassroots language that people speak and they understand. Okay, so with in our language, okay, if refugees are coming into the country, and if undocumented people are coming into the country, and if even the local people who are homegrown, but if they commit crimes and they are harming the community, and then he's just stopping those particular countries to just put a temporary stop. What's wrong with that? I mean, what's legally wrong with that?
Well, I think that's an excellent question. There's several issues with it. First, even all those categories are different categories. So what's wrong with all those categories really depends on an individual's case. I mean, out of just a very boilerplate way to look at it, this is a humanitarian cause. Immigration law deals with human beings, whether families can be reunified, they can stay together, whether they can work legally and provide for their families back home. You mentioned refugees, whether they're actually going to be deported, tortured, persecuted, otherwise severely harmed, beaten. That's a huge concern for anybody. I mean, we're all human beings, and we don't want our fellow human beings to be tortured and killed. So that's a huge problem, because he's actually targeted the most vulnerable of those groups. So if we look at what President Trump's done, you mentioned what's wrong with it, in the very basic sense, it's immoral, I think. And our laws don't just come out of thin air, right? I mean, they're based on morals. That's what we'd like to think. The best of our laws, including the U.S. Constitution, are based on what our founding principles were. And when we think in that sense, and we're saying we're targeting specifically refugees, we're banning all refugees, or those are the very people that need the most help. Or when we say we're targeting children, we're actually prioritizing the children that should be getting the most care. We shouldn't be prioritizing them for deportation. So I think the rhetoric has caused a view that's the opposite of what really our principles are.
Okay. Yeah, in your point of view, you're probably are right. But again, there's another question that arises because of that. Okay, so the citizen of this country and the people who are permanent resident, they're living in here. What happens is their burden, the taxes and everything gets a little bit more higher on them. Because these people, the reason I'm saying that, because I meet all kinds of people. So I always have like two kinds of people that come to me. One kind of category is they're like people who are undocumented, and they approach and say, okay, since you have the TV show and it's a diversity talk, we want to be heard. So another category that comes to me is like, okay, we are the U.S. citizen, we have the green card, and we're the permanent resident of this country. And now, if all of these people come in and they take our share, it's like take their part of the pie. And then that pie comes out of their pie. So that's why they're not really happy about the situation. They said, okay, we waited for 5, 10, 13, 15, whatever, depending on what country they're from, those years to become legal, and then and get a green card, and then actually come in through the right channel.
Yeah.
And, so how do we justify the other category, all the other citizens?
I actually understand your question very well, Sangeeta, because interestingly enough, although my parents are Indian, I grew up in a very small town in Texas. And some of my best friends, I was born in a small town in Texas, some of my best friends have exactly that view. They say, hey, why are we paying for other people? But in reality, actually, that's inaccurate. So any time that anybody even applies for a status, let's say it's a non-immigrant, meaning a temporary status, like a student visa or anything, or even if it's a permanent green card, anytime they apply for that status, you have to show usually an affidavit of support, meaning somebody can actually financially support you. A private individual, a friend or family member can financially support you. So what we consider the legal immigrants, which is again not a straightforward term because people have pending applications, etc. But even those people don't get supported by the government. Even temporary visa holders often do not. So almost the entire majority of immigrants aren't supported. The same is even more true, actually, for undocumented people. So what a lot of people don't realize is that undocumented people can't get those public benefits. In fact, it's incredibly hard to get them unless they have
I don't need to
like
interrupt,
a fake.
but you know what they're saying, that exactly what they're saying. Since they cannot be supported or they cannot be get any kind of help or any kind of benefits, what they do is they harm people, they rob because of the frustration that they have. They can't get all the privileges, they can't get all the benefits that the others are getting. They get jealous. Out of the jealousy, they commit crimes. That's the issue.
Unfortunately, that's also legally not, I mean, statistically not correct. If you look at the number of immigrants, like as a whole, including undocumented immigrants, and you look at the number of U.S. citizens that have committed crimes, it is substantially, I mean, very, very, very significantly lower that any immigrant would commit a crime versus a U.S. citizen. And it's not because they're financially not struggling. They may be struggling, but the reason that they're not actually committing as many crimes as U.S. citizens is because a layer of a variety of reasons. Maybe their culture finds it very shameful to commit crimes. Maybe they're afraid of deportation, so they don't commit crimes. But it's a variety of factors. But no matter the factor, the issue is very actually clear. They don't commit crimes anywhere near U.S. citizens. It's very, very low. And so that's actually been overlooked. I'm glad you raised that issue because President Trump is only focusing on the crimes that he commit, when in reality, a lot of them are the victims. In fact, when we talk about victims, there's a great area of law that I've practiced on a lot of humanitarian cases, and it's called a U visa. It's specifically for victims of crimes, immigrants that are victims of crimes, because we want them to be out of the shadows, to be able to go to the police, have a good rapport with the community to get the real perpetrators off the street.
Okay, yeah, well, I have many more questions that people have asked, and I'm going to bring them up. But at this point, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to TV Houston's Diversity Talk. And I'm your host, Sangeeta Dua. I have a special guest with me from the Modi's law firm, Mr. Modi himself. He is the founder of the law firm. He has been teaching in the University of Houston. He teaches law, immigration law. And he's here with us from the last week. We had a great program that we did a live show of that, and that was our town hall. And we had a lot of questions from the different people too, and we're going to continue that. One of the questions that you have asked was, now there are a lot of people out there are, I would say, people from all ethnicities. I would not generally say that, okay, they were only Indians or only Chinese or only Vietnamese or only Latinos, but in general, there's a fear among people. And that fear is not only with people who are undocumented, but the fear is in the people who are actually a permanent resident. That similar fear is going into the people who are a citizen of this country. They were born here. And the similar fear they have people who got their citizenship from here. So, and the question is, now what is when they have to travel? What do they have to do when they have to travel? When they're traveling from city to city, from the interstate, or if they're traveling in and out of countries, what kind of measurement, what kind of precaution they have to take, what kind of documents they need to carry, and what is actually going on at the border?
Yeah, I mean, that's
so many questions.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. There's a lot of questions there, so I'll try to answer each one at a time, because
it's one question, but then within the question, there's a lot of questions within one question.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of questions within one, but I'll try to answer each one. So it really depends on an individual circumstance. So, for example, if it's a U.S. citizen, clearly U.S. citizens cannot be deported unless somehow their U.S. citizenship is revoked. But generally speaking, U.S. citizens cannot be deported. It's very rare for them to be able to. And what can they carry as proof of their U.S. citizenship? So they don't really have to carry these items, but it may be prudent to carry items, especially there's a law coming around that's being debated now, which people should go to their local or Austin state legislators, but it's called, generally speaking, SB4, Senate Bill 4, which is trying to pass a legislation allowing local law enforcement to cooperate with federal immigration deportation officers called ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement. So if that passed, local law enforcement could literally stop people with a traffic stop and ask about immigration. Now that may be ripe for discrimination, right? How are they going to know to ask for those documents? So if people are scared of that, then they could carry not their original, because they don't want to lose that, but maybe a copy of their passport with them, or put it in their car. That's for U.S. citizens. In terms of green card holders, that's different, legal permanent residents, because green card holders are required to carry the card itself with them. Of course, that's expensive to replace, so they should be careful with that. But that should be the original, the card itself. In terms of other status, that depends on the person's status, or what proof they carry. But I also don't want to go towards this culture of fear, right? If people have valid status in the United States, please don't be too afraid, because there are things to mitigate that risk, like to carry your proof of status, but you should be able to live freely within the United States and be active and be a part of your community, and especially if you're a U.S. including if you're a U.S. citizen, you should be able to go to your local state legislators, and if you're passionate about these sorts of laws not passing in the state legislature, because they're not going to be trained immigration officers, and we don't want it to be ripe for discrimination, then we should do that. But it's not just that. It's that immigration is complex. I mean, when we think in terms of immigration, again, it's not so simple as somebody's illegal or legal. It's, do they have a visa? Do they have a pending application? Are they in the middle of a change of status? Do they have a different way to stay here? Yes, maybe they're in immigration court proceedings, but not everybody in immigration court gets deported. In fact, you have many, many different ways to be able to stay here.
I have more questions about those. I know. Sure. I said, because you're answering some of my questions, the parts of my question, which I was supposed to ask you after that. Yeah, that's one thing. Okay, so now what you're saying is, Mr. Modi is saying that if you are a U.S. citizen, you really don't need to carry anything. You don't have to be worried about it wherever you are traveling, in or out of the country either, right? So, I mean, when you're going out of the country, of course, you have to have the visas and the passport and all the kinds of documents. But within this United States, you don't need to carry anything when you're traveling from state to state?
That's correct. It's not required that you carry anything when you're traveling state to state. But even for example, my parents have been U.S. citizens for a very long time. Very, very long time, over 30 years. But even they may be scared with the rhetoric that's going on now.
And the Obama has done them over 3 million deportation, but he did it quietly. He didn't talk about it. He didn't say anything, but he did it. And even Bush did more than 2 million people he deported during his administration. So blaming on the Trump itself or a Trump administration we're not being very fair to him, because his cabinet is not even ready yet. He's still picking his people, and he's still getting his team ready. He's still getting the committee ready to be able to process any of those things. And even the executive order that he tried to pass, those are still on a hold that too. But I wanted to actually discuss that is happening because this racial profiling and discrimination and all of that stuff was already going on within the country. It just didn't pop up right away. It had already started maybe the last 4 to 5 years, and now it's because if it was to start just now, it would have been a really, really terrible situation for all of us. But since it's been progressing and it's been, I guess, going on. And recently, I wanted to point that out. Recently, there was, again, one more time, media could be a very good thing if you really use it as in a positive way, or media could be a really negative thing if you really, it depends what you show and how you present the things up there. Why I'm bringing it up is because of CNN recently had a documentary last Sunday. I'm sure I don't know if you have watched it, or many of us have watched it. That was kind of enforcing, now I wouldn't say enforcing, like igniting the hatred among other people and towards the other religion and towards the other communities and towards the other cultures. And this particular one was against the Hindus. Apparently, he said that he was trying to convert into a Hindu, and his name is like Raja Aslam, and he had this documentary on CNN. Right after that, following that one particular documentary shown on CNN, there were so many incidents, against Hindu people. And now they said they thought they were Muslim. Some people thought they were Hispanics, and they leave our country, and they were attacked and all of that. I mean, what's your comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of information to comment on. But just to be accurate, first of all, you're correct that President Obama actually deported the most people of any president before him, including any Republican president. So it's not necessarily that deportations haven't increased, but rather, and what I did say is it's a portion of President Trump's rhetoric. I didn't say it was completely his rhetoric, but it definitely is a portion of it. And you can see it in how it's developing in the law. So for example, his priorities are a lot broader than President Obama's. President Obama wanted to prioritize, whether it worked or not, on the bottom level. And I think the consensus is it didn't, because he deported a lot more people than ever before. But remember, the government is very bureaucratic, and there's lots of levels to it. So that was the memo from up top from President Obama, was to prioritize the criminals.
Okay.
But instead, with President Trump, the priorities are a lot broader. It can even be people that have their criminal charge completely dismissed, was never convicted. They were wrongfully charged in the first place. It can even be people who were never charged, but they think committed a crime. Those priorities are really non-priorities. They're not priorities when it's that broadly scoped. But that rhetoric is not only in the memos of which priorities to get in deportation, but it's also in the rhetoric of his recent travel ban. In fact, the district court in Hawaii that judge stated it discriminates based on Muslim religion. He thinks it's likely to discriminate based on Muslim religion. So I think that does contribute to the rhetoric. I think, although that CNN, and I'll talk about that in a second, the CNN clip was very bad for Hindus, and I'm actually Hindu myself, because it doesn't accurately say what we do. I think there is a portion that I heard where he's eating his own flesh or something. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, because most Hindus are vegetarian. So I think it was just something that CNN did for ratings, like an extreme example of Hinduism for ratings. Has no actual application in what Hindus are. But that CNN aside, even before then, you started to see examples of Indians being even shot. At the Kansas, right? Including Kansas, exactly. And when we see that, what's happening there is just the rhetoric on immigrants, combining with that maybe that pre-bias that some people have, that most people don't actually have, but some of those extreme people had. Now they're more emboldened, and so that's really awful, because you don't even realize like who you're shooting. First of all, nobody deserves to be shot at. But second of all, the people that were shot at, I think, were Indians. They weren't even Muslim. I mean, most Hindus have very different beliefs, the opposite of Muslims. But even Muslims are generally, I think, very great people. I mean, there are so many moderate Muslims. And in fact, we're banning those very people from coming in the United States, because often those moderate Muslims, especially refugees, that need our protection the most. They helped the U.S. allies, for example, in Syria, and I've worked on those asylum refugee cases, and I teach asylum refugee law at the University of Houston. It's those people that we should be helping, that were allies with us in trying to make the world a better place. We shouldn't be shutting the doors on them.
Yes, correct. Thank you so much for that. We will be taking a short break, and when we come back, and we will discuss some more.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for staying with us. This is our third segment of the Diversity Talk. And then we were talking to our special guest in our studio. His name is Mr. Modi. Mr. Modi has his own law firm, the Modi Law Firm, and they basically do immigration, all kinds of immigration. So let me ask you, Mr. Modi, because we were asking all type of questions immigration related. Now, and you are the founder of the Modi Law Firm. So what does your law firm specialize in, or what do you guys primarily do?
Yeah,
what kind of immigrations that you do?
I think that's an excellent question. We're more of a boutique law firm. So we practice almost every area of immigration, but our type of practice is to be much more detailed on the packets. So we don't have any paralegals work on cases. We have only attorneys work on those cases because it's people's lives at stake. So, but within the field of immigration
I'm glad you said that. It is so important. When you said that we don't have a paralegal or any random people working because of the people's lives at stake.
Yeah.
You know, that's so, yeah. Please go ahead.
And to answer your question about what types of laws, immigration laws that we practice, we do everything from deportation defense, which is if you're already in deportation proceedings and trying to stay here in the U.S., to appeals, complex appeals and motions to reopen that a lot of other immigration attorneys don't do because of the complexity of the nature of the case, to employment-based immigration, including we've worked on investor visas, which is if you are able to invest a certain amount of income and try to get a green card is one example, called an EB-5 investor visa, to family-based, if you want to petition your mother, your sister, or a spouse, for example. We've worked on a lot of those cases.
Is that the amount increased on the EB-5 lately?
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation of the amount increasing on the EB-5. It hasn't yet, but it may at any time. There's been a lot of rhetoric of Congress to do that.
What about the H-1? They're also increasing their limits on them?
The latest on
it's already have, right? One from 65 to 130?
Well, the latest on the H-1B is the bigger news that came out recently is that they've stopped the premium processing of the H-1B. So you could pay an additional fee to try to get an answer on your H-1B faster. It was good for employers that needed to know an answer faster so they can, work on their company a little bit better and know, and then it's also good for the applicant to know when he or she is starting. But that premium processing looks like it may not occur any longer, and so that was the latest big news on the H-1B. But that's an excellent question as well. But yeah, we practice almost every area of law, but unlike a lot of law firms, I think what they do is have maybe paralegals or other individuals work on the packet. They may do a cheaper flat fee rate, and then the packet won't be as good and they won't spend as many hours on it. And that's how a firm can make money, right? It's a company that can make money is by doing less hours and getting more payment for those less hours because they're paying their employees less, to work on their cases. We have the opposite philosophy at my firm. So we want to work as many hours as it takes to do a really good job on a packet. And so we may slightly charge more. It's not a whole lot more, but we may slightly charge more in order to get a better work product at the end.
Right,
and it makes the whole difference. That's the most gratifying part of my area of law. You get to see families reunited or spouses united and being able to people to work legally or not be removed and even tortured or killed. I worked on those cases and it's just life-changing.
When you said your law firm does this and all the specifications that you just mentioned, now general people, if they're having some kind of immigration issues, how would they know what law firm did they go with? There are like so many attorneys out there. How do we know which immigration law firm is better, and what is the difference between them, and how do we pick the right one? So if you want to comment on that one.
Yeah, that is an excellent question. So, and a complicated one because it's not easy to find out. Sometimes people will Google a lawyer and then not really know. Besides that, are they credible or not? I think there's a few things people can do. So I think one thing that they should definitely do is look. Every lawyer, if they are a real lawyer, they have to be licensed as a lawyer, and so they can look at, for example, if it's Texas, the State Bar of Texas, and see if they're actually licensed. That may seem obvious, but it's not, because unfortunately in immigration law, there are a lot of notarios. So in Mexico, that may mean attorney, but it doesn't here. It's just a notary public. And so there's a lot of fake people trying to act like attorneys just to get people's money, and then doing a really bad job, in some cases, a lot of cases, ruining their entire case by submitting an application that shouldn't have been submitted in misrepresentation. So the first thing to do is, are they a real lawyer? And the way to check that is their own State Bar, the State Bar of Texas, for example, website. The second thing that they can do is look at what are their qualifications. Like, for example, did they graduate from a credible law school? Is it a law school that's a real law school, or is it a law school that may be
an online law school?
Not credible, exactly. So I think that's the second issue that they can do. The third is, how did their past clients say they did? and for example,
References.
exactly, references. So I mean, even that for, when we go and eat at places we look at, but definitely when it's life-changing services like an attorney, you should look at like Google reviews, and I think fortunately we've had all 5-star Google reviews for my firm, and I hope we continue to do that. But there's over 27 of those for us, for example. But like, any other firm, you should look at what are the past reviews and are those real reviews,
Yeah.
I think that's a
What I
third
wanted
area.
to say was cheap is not necessarily good, and expensive is not necessarily bad. You have to look at both ways to see if some people think, okay, if you're paying too much money, so attorneys are better.
Yeah.
Or if somebody's charging less, then maybe they're not good. It really has nothing to do with, and I really don't want to sound like a salesperson, but I just wanted to mention that it has nothing to do with how much they charge and all of that. You need to kind of find out what they do, because when the immigration law, it's a matter of their life and staying with the family sometimes, and a lot of people are getting deported, a lot of people are being picked up, and there's, as we had mentioned earlier, there's a lot of fear in people. So if somebody's out there looking for a real help and a real a good attorney that could save their lives and that could save their families, any message that you have for them, that you want to leave your phone number, you want to refer them, or what do you?
I think you should find a really good attorney. Even if it's not our firm, it should be a very competent attorney. And the ways to look for those is at least some of those factors is the 3 I mentioned. Are they a licensed attorney? Do they have Google reviews? Have they worked on those types of cases? How long have they been licensed? In what law school, have they gone to? Or, especially could be credible if they're a law professor, And so I think those are really good criteria to look at. In terms of any case that you do, you should really have an in-depth consultation with an attorney, because really, honestly, every case is different. Like how you came in, whether you have any criminal issues, whether they've been dismissed, how that impacts your area of law, what you want to change, what you qualify for, is very complex. I think a lot of people misunderstand that immigration may be just filling out forms, but it's actually one of the most complex areas of law. Some knowledgeable legal experts say it could be even the second most complex area of law after SEC and tax law. So I think, and I agree, I think immigration is incredibly complex. And so I think you need a competent, smart attorney to assist you. Of course, people can look at our website if they'd like, and view my own bio and other things. But no matter who they choose, have really good questions for that consultation and see if that attorney can answer those questions if they feel comfortable meeting with him or her.
I think after this show, a lot of Indians are definitely coming to you. That's very nice. Yes, because you're very informative, very knowledgeable. Second is because your last name is Modi. And our current president, Prime Minister of India, not president, the Prime Minister of India, Mr. Narendra Modi. And he is becoming one of those phenomenal, fantastic Prime Minister of all time. So because of that last name, you definitely going to get famous and it got really popular. A lot of people will give you a call. His number is right underneath his name as well. That's Modi's law firm. You can always contact him and take your cases if you have any. But now, remember this number and write down the number once again, because if anybody they are at the border, they get picked up or they get picked up by anybody, you need to have one good attorney's phone number handy, because you only allowed one call sometimes, and that one call, it cannot be to anybody else. That one call needs to be to an attorney that and you can trust, that they're good. So if or somebody that close to you or your loved ones are in this situation where they feel like they have some documents and they don't have completely documented in this country, and they have any kind of fear, just have this number handy. and always have a consultation and talk to him about different cases, different even if it's a deportation or if it's the immigration related, any kind of questions. Just having picking up a phone call and talking or checking up the references, it doesn't take too much. And these days, pretty much everybody carrying these smartphones, and it's like so handy. You just look it up and find out what they do, how long they have been into the system, how long they have been practicing, and how many cases they have done so far, and what the references are saying about them, what the Google reviews are saying about them. What I will tell you something about Google reviews on this topic is not everybody is a social media, professionals and people like that. Some people just don't go. They might have many good and satisfied clients, but those clients are maybe elderly people or the kind of people who don't really go on websites and go on the social media to write things down. So I personally think don't just rely on just the Google reviews. You actually need to talk to the person and see what your situation is and if they can solve it better. I
think that's definitely an excellent point, and I think that consultation is really important. I unfortunately see too often that people just sign with the first attorney they meet, and that first attorney might falsely promise too many things that aren't actually possible in the law. So I think, have a really in-depth conversation with that attorney. Don't take anything as if that attorney is completely right, or if that person is an attorney at all. It could be a notario. So I think, find someone credible first, make sure they are an attorney, listen to that and have really good questions about that process ready for that consultation and see if that attorney can answer them. That's an excellent point.
Yeah, I do have one more question though that somebody had asked, I just looked over, is if somebody's at the border, maybe a Canadian border, or it could be a Mexican border, what if they go to work over there, or they were on vacation before all of this started and all of it just take place. They were visiting outside the countries for maybe 4 months, 6 months, or maybe a little longer than that. They had a parole and they had taken, and they're outside. When they're returning back, what would be the complications and what are they facing, what they are coming into it? Before you answer this question, we do have to go to a short break, but when we come back, that answer, and then we have many more questions after that, and we'll just take a short break. Welcome once again to TV Houston's Diversity Talk, and I'm your host, Sangeeta Dua. We have a great attorney in our studio today. His name is Mr. Modi, and he represents the Modi Law Firm. He's a founder of that, and if you need to reach out to a law firm, and as we said earlier, if you are in any kind of immigration need, you can reach out to them, and their website is themodilawfirm.com.
That's correct, Sangeeta.
themodilawfirm.com?
Yes, again, that's right. themodilawfirm.com.
That's the name of the website. Then you could always reach out to him, and his phone number is on the screen as well, that you need to contact him or you need to reach out to him. We had a few more questions. The number is right there, 832-422-7780. 832-422-7789. 89. Okay, 7789. It's once again 832-422-80.
832-422-7789.
7789, yes. Okay, so with that said, as we were talking, there was a concern about someone who lived here and got his green card approved. So after his family-based green card approved, and then he had to go back and he had to close out his business and sell out his properties and all of that. So he took 2-year re-entry permit or parole, advanced parole, or 2-year re-entry permit. So what kind of complications that he'll be looking at, or what kind of situation that he will face once he's re-entering the United States?
Sure.
That's the question number one. Another question is, if someone's driving the car these days and just traveling from one state to the other, when he's at the border of the state, will he be concerned about if he'll be stopped or he'll be asked any question or what kind of documents that he should carry?
Well, I think those are two excellent questions. I have to give a disclaimer here and say, we can't answer individualized questions because it could violate confidentiality. This is we're on a public TV show here. So these answers will be very general answers. It depends on a person's individual circumstances. So these two individuals, even if not with us, they should do a consultation with a competent immigration attorney to do a really holistic approach and ask them questions about their background. But very generally speaking, when a person leaves and they have a green card and they have prior permission, it's called an I-131 form, where they leave the United States and they have prior permission to leave for up to 2 years. They have to be gone for less than 2 years, even if they have that prior permission. Upon re-entry in the United States, I think the question is, what documents do they need to bring? Well, remember, anytime somebody's entering the United States, they're subject to inspection once again with Customs and Border Protection. And so that they should have with them is whether they show proof of their true intent. So for example, if somebody has legal permanent residence, their intent is supposed to be that they're a permanent resident of the United States, and as such, they should have documentation showing, for example, that they are a permanent resident of the United States. So what ties do they have in the U.S.? For example, do they have a house here? Do they have a job to come back here? Do they have family members here? That's one type of documentation they should be ready about, and including subject to inspection of anything they bring with their luggage or cell phones, etc., to show that. And then the second issue is, what roots do they not have back home, showing they don't have permanent residence? So you mentioned he went to sell off his business and other things. You may want to have some documentation showing he doesn't have roots back home, as well as, of course, the I-131 approval notice and those approval notice for up to 2 years, and any valid, of course, passport or other travel document that they have. So I think that's the answer for the first case. For the second very general answer, again, and this is not legal advice, for the person where was the question that they're driving
from one state
and they're going
to
the border. Yeah. And so I think the checkpoint, so one, everybody needs to be aware that at the border, there often are increased checkpoints. So you are more subject to inspections at the border for that issue. And so because they're going to be subject to those increased checkpoints, they need to have valid status and show that valid status. And also, at the border, there's often something utilized called expedited removal. Expedited removal means if you don't show valid status, you don't have status, you could potentially be deported without even seeing a judge. So really, really bad. There's not a lot of judicial oversight of expedited removals, so you could be removed very quickly by just a Customs and Border Protection officer. So that's even more crucial why you should have your valid documentation with you. What type of documentation, again, depends on what you have. If it's a green card, you need to have the actual card itself. If it's other status, you may have approval notices, you may have a stamp in your passport to show that status, a valid I-94, which is an arrival departure record for certain non-immigrants, like temporary statuses. Those are different types of proof that they could have.
I have one last question before we finish, because we're coming to the very end of our program and we'll have to say goodbye pretty soon. But very last question is, it's a very important question, so I wanted to have that in it, is if they get picked up, if they get stopped, what rights do they have? And that question is, if somebody is undocumented, do they have rights? If somebody has a green card with them, what kind of rights they have? Or if they are a citizen, what kind of rights they have? Very quick, because we're...
Yeah, it's hard to answer anything quickly, I think, under the law.
Yeah.
But just very quickly, it depends on where you get stopped. It is clear that immigrants actually have, even undocumented immigrants have certain constitutional rights, like, for example, to due process. They may have rights under the Fourth Amendment, a right to unreasonable search and seizures, for example, of our Constitution. And so they do have certain rights. That's first. Of where they get stopped depends on what more rights they have. And then second of all, what can they do, right? And so, if they're here, for example, in valid status, a lot of times, especially if they're not subject to expedited removal, which may happen at the border, but it could even happen, President Trump has broadened it to even enforcing it to happen even within the U.S. if they've been here for less than 2 years. But assuming those issues don't arise, a lot of people may have the right to an immigration court hearing, and they should not waive that right. So sometimes ICE deportation officers or Customs Border Protection officers try to sign away a person's rights to that, say just take deportation and get out of here. I've seen that a lot of times, and I think people should be incredibly careful not to sign away their rights to due process and have a fair day in court if they have a case. So those are some of the things that they can do.
What form does it called? That they should not sign?
It's called voluntary departure. It's one type of form, but another form literally can be expedited, like giving away or expedited removal, and then other people may be actually afraid to be deported back. And even if you're under expedited removal, you have the right to ask to apply for asylum and have a reasonable or credible fear interview depending on your circumstance. And so don't sign away these rights. If you're also not sure what the document says, definitely try to contact a competent immigration attorney first before signing anything. And I think that would be the general advice, depending on your circumstances.
Okay, so that's a lot of information that you packed up within the last 5 minutes. You can't do this, you can't do those sign this, those sign this. Okay, now I don't think people would comprehend it as much as you had said it, because you're very knowledgeable, and that is a pack of knowledge that you had given in this one little hour, and that is really commendable. We really appreciate your time and the service that you're doing for a community, the free service that you're doing for a community, as well as the town hall that you've been attending and giving out your advice and your services. That is so, I mean, we definitely need to come out and thank you for that. And behalf of our team, behalf of our station and the community that is watching and my viewership, I thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it very much. And if you guys need any kind of help, you know the number, you have it right there. It's themodislawfirm.com is the website, and you can always reach out to them or talk to them in person. The number's right there. Is 832-422-7769.
89. Yeah, no
7789.
But no, it's my honor to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. And it's an honor to work on behalf of so many people that deserve it. Thanks.
And any last message that you want to give it to the people who are out there? Don't be scared.
No, I just think that we're all together. I mean, we all, even scientifically, come from the same place. The earth comes from somewhere, right? And so we're all family. I think it's an honor to do this area of law and to see real differences in people's lives. And I honestly think most people are really good people, and they want others to have the same opportunities that they've had. I've been blessed to have some really great opportunities due to my parents' hard work, and so I want to be able to give that to other people, especially the most vulnerable. And I think, to keep in mind, we shouldn't be prioritizing refugee deportations or not being able to allow in the United States, and same with children. Those are the opposite of the priorities we should have. And then when we take a broader scope, it's great that you have programs like this to help the rest of the community too, and to educate them no matter what their immigration law issue is. So thank you again. It's my honor to be here, and let's make a change for everyone's life a little bit better. Thank you.
Yes, and before I close out, and then I just wanted to say that be safe out there. Carry any document that you have, whether it'll be your driver's license, and as well as the copy of your passport and an actual green card that you have. And don't be afraid. You don't need to be scared of anything. If you have not done any crime wrong, and you have not committed any crime, you don't really need to be worried about. And even if you have committed any crime, consult an attorney and see what are your options are and where you stand and how can you be legal. And if you have not paid your taxes, if you're not a documented person here, how can you can become a documented, and then how you can raise your family here and save your family and all of that. It's all, with all that said, I would say thank you so much for watching. Once again, we'll see you next Friday at the same time, 7:30, right here at the Diversity Talk, brought to you by TV Houston.